Have you ever wondered why, no matter how many hip openers or forward folds you do, you can't go deeper into yoga poses? Well, if so, this Yin Yoga class is for you. Hi, I'm Melissa from Yoga with Melissa, and this is Real Yoga for Real People. We're all about connection. Connection to a teacher and teachings that allow you to connect with your true nature, and a community of people that are dedicated to a genuine path of spiritual transformation. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications because I put out a brand new yoga video every single Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific, and we have a live class on the last Friday of every month. I have some great content coming up for you, so let me tell you what's coming up. On next week, December 15th, I'm going to be doing a Yin Yoga for sleep. December 22nd, we'll do Yin Yoga for neck and shoulders, and our live class on December 29th will be a Yin Yoga for lower back and hips. So make sure you subscribe and press that little bell so you don't miss a single class. If you like today's class, be sure to press that like button and let me know what you like about it in the comments so I can continue to make more content that you enjoy. I have a testimonial today from Facebook from Lou from Warwickshire, UK. Lou says, "Hi Melissa, I've been doing your YouTube yoga videos for a while now, and I wanted to say thank you so much for all the content. I tried going to yoga classes for a while, but none are as good as yours. I have stuck with your classes since I found you because I can do them at home, anytime, and it's fantastic. I love your way of teaching, and that I never feel like I'm exhausting myself. I'm going to stick with you as my yoga teacher permanently. Thanks so much." Thank you, Lou, for taking the time to leave your comment on Facebook, and thanks to all of you who take your time to leave your comments on YouTube, on iTunes, on Facebook, on Instagram, on my website, and as always, our most in-depth conversations happen in our membership community. Thanks to Squeeze Yoga Clothing for my clothes. Today I'm wearing long black leggings and a long sleeve bamboo top with butterflies on the sleeve. And thanks to Dusky Leaf for my props. Today you are going to need 2 blankets. Dusky Leaf does have these wool blankets. I know they can be harder to find, and they're such a great prop for yin. It's good to have 2 blankets on hand, possibly even 3. 2 of the sturdier ones, one for underneath you, one for sitting up on for forward folds. And then you having cushions is a good idea to prop your legs or blocks. Strap is a good idea, and having a wall. So that's what you will need. Okay, this is the most important part of the class, so people that fast forward until when we start are going to miss this. I don't know how I'm going to deal with that. Maybe put it in the show notes, but this is the most important part of the class. There are 2 things that prevent you from being more open in your hip opening poses. One is contracture and one is compression. And we're going to talk about compression right now before we even get started in the class, but this is the start of the class. So compression is actually bone on bone in your body. So contracture is the tension in the ligaments and the muscles that prevent you from going further in a pose. But that is not always what prevents you from going further in the pose. So there are times when something called compression, that's bone on bone in a pose, prevents you from going forward. So in a hip opening pose, there are 2 kinds of contracture that can impede your forward movement. One is impingement on the femur bone in the hip socket, and one is a pinching of the buttocks between the femur and the back of the ilium, which is your whole pelvic region. So let me show you what that can look like. So one is really happens more in external rotation, and those of you will know what that looks like when you go to cross your legs, your knees sit up here and have always sat up here, and they never go any further. So that is, you come and you open your knees and then they just stop. And that's because there's bone on bone compression here that's happening. The bones are stopping it. It's nothing that you can do any further in your No amount of stretching, no amount of yin yoga, no amount of stressing the connective tissue is going to allow you to open your knees further. It's bone on bone compression. The other way that it often happens and shows up, and you guys have seen this in my body for years, is in a forward fold. Here I've reached bone on bone compression with the back of my femur bone hitting the back of my pelvis. That's it. It's always been like this in my body. It can never go any further. So no amount of stretching my hamstrings, of putting tension on my hamstrings is going to change this bone structure in my body. Tim's going like this, but it's just my body. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't affect my quality of life. It's just how it is. So it's really important to pay attention to that, because if I go beyond the limits of compression in my body here or here, then what ends up happening is, so for example, in my body, I actually have a lot of range of motion externally. And if you don't, and you try to make your body look like mine, you're going to injure yourself. You're really going to hurt yourself. Same thing here in my body. If I go beyond the limits of the compression in my body, bone on bone, then I am going to really hurt myself. I'm going to tear the ligaments, because it's just not what's possible in my body because of bone on bone compression. So I hope I make that clear. Your body will give you feedback. You'll go and then it'll stop. And that's just what'll happen. So you need to pay attention to that in your body. And is that clear? Yeah, that's compression. So let's pay attention to compression in our body, the skeletal structures of our body, the bones of our body, where they go and where they stop. Okay, I just think that's really important, especially, kind of in the world where we pay attention to shapes more than feeling. Okay, let's lie down and come into our centering to begin. If you have any low back issues, then you are going to want to place your bolster underneath your knees. There's a prop I didn't tell you to have. Already asking you to get it. Or bend your knees and place your feet flat on the floor. So start by feeling the support of the earth underneath you, particularly underneath your pelvis. Feel your whole pelvis resting on the ground. Feel your sacrum. Become aware of your hip joints, the top of your femur bone. Allow this part of your body to shift and settle into the ground. And then breathe into your lower belly. Feeling the space in the pelvis. And then from here, you're going to slowly bend your knees and roll to your side and make your way up to seated. Okay. So from here, we're going to place our legs in a diamond shape. If you have your feet closer to your groin, not right up against your groin, that makes it really a yang style pose. But you will feel it more in your groin and your abductors. Further away, you'll feel it more in your hamstrings. If you have any sciatica, it's a good idea to come up onto a folded blanket. Also, that'll help you if you're pulled under on your back more. So you want to elevate your pelvis to aid in the forward fold here. If you have any low back issues that don't allow you to do forward folding, then keep a flat, straight back here. Okay. Also, I do think it's a good idea to fill the space here underneath your knees. Okay, so nothing's hanging out in midair. Okay, you can also use a bolster here. And you can place your head on the bolster there for extra support, especially if you have any neck issues, cervical spine issues, any whiplash. That's a good idea there. So this pose is really great for your hip joints. It provides good abduction of the hips. So remember, in Yin, we come into the pose. We find our appropriate edge. So if you're feeling it, you're doing it. We don't want to go to like 100% effort. We want to find that about 70% effort. And then we resolve to be still so that we can come into the deeper connective tissues that wrap around the joints and the bones. So I spoke about compression at the beginning of the class, but there is also something called contracture that we spoke about a few episodes ago. Because we sit in chairs so much in our culture, at work, when we travel to and from work in our cars and on public transit, during our leisure time, our backs are weak and our hips are tight. So we do need to spend time opening our hips. So very slowly you're going to come out of this pose, and we'll lie down on our backs for a moment just to feel the rebound of this pose. Okay, the next pose I'm going to show the modification for first, and then I'll show you how to set up the pose if you're going to do the actual pose. The modification you can take lying on your stomach, and we're going to do one side at a time, so you could hold on to your leg like this, even draw it slightly out to the side. Okay, so like this or slightly out to the side. So for this pose, it's going to be half recline, half saddle pose. So let me show you what it looks like. You can sit on your heel and just lean back. Some of you will be able to sit on the inside of your heel, which will allow for internal rotation of your hip. So we did external rotation of our hip. We're going to do internal rotation of our hip now. You don't want to do this if it's going to bother your knees or your ankle. You're going to take the option that I showed you on your stomach if it doesn't work for your knees or your ankle, okay? We're trying to access the hip here. So if it comes into your knees, it's no good. And leaning back like this is just fine. Or you can even lean against the wall. You can start to come a little bit more into the pose if this pose is accessible to you by using props. So you can start to build a little tower for yourself so that you can lean back on a bolster. Okay. So you can start by just sitting up on your heel. That's a great start with one leg out. Or if you can sit, depending on your body. Again, compression is an issue in this pose. Not everybody will be able to sit on the inside of their foot. So see what works for you and your body. And you're going to lie back. So this pose stresses your hip flexors and also internally rotates your hip. It's also good for your lumbar spine. You want to avoid, if you have any bad back issues or tight SI joint issues, if your knees are being tested too much, if your ankles are pressing too much. So our hip joints the connective tissue around our hip joints we experience contracture. They've been shrink wrapped around the hip joint from lack of use. So when we practice Yin Yoga, we affect the connective tissue by that slow and gentle traction to help to loosen that shrink wrap around the hip joint. Okay, so very slowly you're going to tuck your chin, draw your navel down, and you're going to roll up. And then once you're upright, you're going to keep coming forward. And you will take your legs out long. And I like to just lie back again and feel the effects of the pose in my body. And then let's do the pose on the other side. So this time you're either going to sit on your right heel, or if your body allows for that, you're going to sit on the inside of your right heel and extend your left leg. And then rest back over the bolster again. Okay, so very slowly you're going to make your way out of this pose. And coming all the way up again. And then bringing your legs out in front. And resting back again to feel the rebound, to feel the energy flowing through your body. Okay, that pose can make people quite anxious and tense. It runs right along that stomach meridian, which is known for anxiety and nervousness. All right, next pose. I'm pretty sure it's Pigeon. Yes. So you may want your bolster for this one as well. Boy, not having a bolster on the list was a major omission. I'll change the show notes, yes. Okay, so option for this pose, especially if Pigeon, or it's called Sleeping Swan in Yin, puts pressure on your knees, then you can do figure 4 on your back instead. So you would lie on your back and do this instead, and you could also do it against the wall with your foot, this foot on the wall, and then you don't even have to use your hands, which is very Yin. Then your upper body can be completely relaxed. Okay. So this is quite a good way of opening your hips, Sleeping Swan. External rotation of your hips. Again, let's take the right knee forward to the right wrist. Bring your left leg back and down. And the key thing in this pose is for your hips to come back and down. So your hips may be lifted up off the ground. And if they are, you want to fill that space with that folded blanket. Okay, fill whatever space is there. Don't have them hanging out in the air. And then you're going to fold forward. So this is a strong external rotation of your front hip. The quads and hip flexors of your left leg right now are being stressed. You really want to watch that pressure on the front knee. So you can bring this right foot more underneath your right hip. You can also flex your right foot to protect your right knee and really keep your weight in the back of your hips. Okay, so very slowly you're going to come out of this pose. And just lie on your back so you can feel the rebound. And then we'll do the other side. So you may take eye of the needle here again, or you can do keyhole on the other side. This pose can bring up anger and frustration, irritation, because it affects the liver gallbladder meridian. So bring that left knee forward to the left wrist. Remember, you can flex your foot, reach your left leg back and long. If your left hip doesn't rest on the ground, you're going to fill that space with that folded blanket, and you're going to fold forward over your bolster or cushion. So your hip joint is held in place by the labrum, and this is a kind of cartilage that forms a rim around the hip socket, and it holds your femur bone in place. Your hip joint is actually a kind of ball and socket joint, which allows for a large range of motion. Okay, very slowly you're going to make your way out of this posture. And we'll lie on our backs. Feel the rebound. Okay, next pose is half happy baby pose. And a few options here. You're going to bend your right leg in, hold on to the bottom of the foot, and draw your knee into your chest. You can use a strap around your foot in this pose. The key is to let gravity do the work here and not use this as a yang arm bicep pose. You can also put a bolster underneath your pelvis in this pose, but you really don't want to do that if you have any low back issues if you have low back disorders that don't allow forward flexion of the spine. You don't want your pelvis to come off the ground. And if you have SI joint problems, you don't want to go too deep in this pose. So the option with the bolster looks like this. You're going to press into your hips. Place the bolster underneath your hips and then draw your knee in. I actually really prefer this version. It makes the whole pose a lot more accessible for me. So let's press the timer and get started. So remember to let gravity do the work for you in this pose. Relax and soften the muscles. Breathe into the lower belly and the hips. This is a very deep hip opening pose. Okay, you're going to slowly release this side. And then the added bonus that I like about having the bolster under the hips is that it allows for a nice hip opening even in the rebound. Okay, let's do the other side. We're going to we're going to move into this slowly. Take your left leg in and then point your sole of your foot towards the ceiling and extend your right leg long. Hold on to the ball of your foot. So remembering the yin principles of softening, surrendering, letting go, yielding, so we can have that slow and gentle traction through the hip joint. Very slowly and gradually you're going to release this pose from your body. Take a moment here to feel the rebound. And then we're going to come upright to a couple of seated positions. And this is one of my favorite yin poses to do. It's called toe squat. It won't be accessible for everybody, especially if you have hammer toes or toe issues. Then I'm going to show you an option, and you can use the wall. So if your toes you can't stretch your toes, then you're going to place your toes against the wall and do what you can. Some of you will be able to join me for toe squat. So the way it works is you tuck all your toes under, including your baby toes, and then you sit back as much as you can. If it's painful, you're going to lean forward. And we're only going to stay here for about a minute. So the Taoists have a saying, open toes, open mind. And so I really like that. And also, all the 6 major meridians of the lower body begin and end in the toes. So that's why I really like this posture. So I try to do it every time I do Yin Yoga, and eventually I think I'll be able to sit back on my heels completely. If it's too much for your knees, you can always put a rolled blanket between your heels and your buttocks as well. Okay, very good. You're going to slowly come out of this and enjoy the deliciousness of that. Okay. And then our final pose for today is shoelace pose. So you're going to cross your right leg over your left leg. And for most people, you probably won't be able to evenly sit down on both butt cheeks. You'll fill that space with the blanket. Or if your knees aren't stacking one on top of the other, you might need more than one blanket. Fill the space there as well. Okay? So you might also want your bolster here. And you can fold forward here. Again, if you have low back issues that don't allow for forward flexion, you're not going to fold forward. You're just going to keep a straight back here. So this is a fabulous hip opener. It's good for your hip joints. You have to be careful if you have sciatica. It can aggravate sciatica. So if you have sciatica, you probably want to take keyhole on your back again, which is good for, keyhole is good for relieving sciatica. You want to keep your weight back in your hips, in your hip bones, and stay even on both hips in this pose. Very slowly, you're going to make your way up and out of this pose, and we'll just take our legs straight out in front of us here to feel the rebound. And then we'll do the other side. So your left leg is going to go over top of your right leg. Again, feel the space under your hips, between your knees. Prop where you need to. You can forward fold over the bolster. My bolster was slipping, so it worked well for me to place it on top of my knees. So one thing that I like to think about is our life connection always. So we can do an hour of hip openers on our mat, and this can really help to create some slow and gentle traction in our hips to relieve that contracture in our hips, that kind of shrink wrap that happens from spending time sitting in chairs and that lack of range of motion that happens in the rest of our lives. But the thing is, if we spend 8 hours sitting at a job and then 2 hours sitting in a commute to and from work, and then 2 hours sitting in a chair on a couch after work watching television or surfing the web, then that's a lot of time that we have to make up for on the mat. Also, we spend about hopefully 8 hours sleeping at night. So that's 16, 18, 20 hours a day when our hips aren't getting any movement really. So the point I'm trying to make is that 1 hour of slow, gentle traction to overcome contracture is helpful, but we can start to think about ways that we can prevent contracture in the rest of our life too. And one of the ways is to spend more time on the floor so that we're not limiting the range of motion of our hips, so that if we sit on the floor, then we actually move around a lot more. Going for walks, things like that. Moving our hips through their range of motion more. So just something to think about. Okay, that is it. It's just time for Shavasana. So I would recommend you take this bolster and you place it underneath your knees for that nice smooth energy flow through your body. And then you rest back on your back. And you allow your body to integrate and receive your practice. And you're going to stay resting here in Shavasana, and I'm going to sit up and read you a poem. Okay, so this poem is called The Landscape Wants to Be Understood Slowly by J.T. Barbarese. The ripples processing from here then gone beyond the pool into distant gorge and damp sand are not mine, but oh how they remind me, each in widening flight from origins that so much is kept from me. How the stopped sap sticks where the bark bled over the stumps, so that once frost smites the ground, a rich rice of maggots will freeze to the peach that falling froze to the trash can lid. Bless this world's cold economies, its white violence, July's bonanzas end in a rot-hollowed stump, that such bogus integrity throve in the green heart of void. So gradually allow your breath to deepen. Wiggle your fingers and toes. Bend your knees. Roll to your right side. And slowly make your way up to seated. We'll finish with our mantra. Left palm up, right palm down. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. May all beings be happy and free, and may the thoughts, words, and actions of my own life contribute in some way to the happiness and freedom for all. So thank you so much for joining me for this Yin Yoga for Hips class. If you learned something today about the difference between compression and contraction, let me know by pressing that like button, and let me know what you learned in the comments about your own hips. If you learned something about compression and about your own anatomy and your own bone structure, let me know in the comments. And if you know somebody who would benefit from today's class, please feel free to share this with them. Our next live class is December 29th at 9 a.m. Pacific time, and it will be a Yin Yoga class for lower back and hips. And thank you so much for your donations. Christine, she sent me a donation as a Christmas gift. Thank you, Christine. That was kind of you. Sean from New York. Beverly from Michigan also gave a very generous donation. Anne-Marie from Australia and Leah from New York. Right now we're saving up for our slider, so that shot that Tim just did, so we can have those very smooth. So if you'd like to donate to our slider, it costs about $300 US. You can make a donation and just put a note in your donation that you'd like it to go towards the slider, and we'll put it towards that. Opening your hips is not something you could do in just one class. It happens over time. As I said, an hour is a lot to make up for 20 hours of not moving in our day-to-day life. So there's a good, better, best way to do that. Good would be to subscribe to my YouTube channel, because I shared in the show notes list of we have over 90 hip opening classes on our YouTube channel. It was 93 this morning. It'll be 94 after this class. So that's a lot. So that helps. Better would be to sign up for our mailing list so that you get our classes every time. Today, I think I put the yoga for anxiety list up there, so that's a really good one. Maybe I'll change that to the back pain one, because the back pain, often if you have back pain, hips are the issue. So I think I'll switch that. So it's like an 8-day for back pain. Go to melissawest.com/backpain, and then you'll receive a lot of helpful tips for back pain, full-length classes, and also just short tips and stuff for back pain. And a lot of times hips are the culprit for back pain. You can see it sits right in around that area. And then finally, the best way to deal with hips is to become a member of our community. I went in there today and looked at how many classes we have for hips, and we have 20 value-added classes for hips in our membership community, including Yin Yoga classes, including our connective tissue classes, and we have short classes. We have 10 hippie short classes. We have long hip classes. My infamous Happy Hips class. So lots of great stuff in there for you, where we can support you in an ongoing way as a member. So I'm sending you lots of love from beautiful British Columbia. May your joy be as deep as our Pacific Ocean. May you be as strong as our mountains, and may you be as rooted as the old growth trees in our forest. Om Shanti Namaste.
Melissa would love to hear your questions and thoughts. Please leave your comments below the video. Thank you for your reviews on iTunes and YouTube. Your reviews help us to share yoga and a yoga lifestyle with others around the world. If you have a question for Melissa, you can leave a voice message at melissawest.com, and Melissa may answer it in an upcoming blog.